What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about understanding our invasive thoughts and how this correlates maybe into family consumer science. But the first thing we have is a pop quiz. Here, I can take the computer, give the pop quiz to you. And so I'll give you just a second to kind of look over those and answer those. Just kind of, you can answer them in your head. I'll give you a minute or so to do that. Everybody good? Have our answers? Cool. All right. So the essence of the pop quiz was invasive thoughts. Some people refer to these as intrusive thoughts. But what are invasive thoughts? Invasive thoughts are harmful or damaging thoughts that arise in your brain uncontrollably. And so what that means is that it's nothing from within you. There's nothing in your brain that makes you want to think these things. There's nothing that you desire about these things. They are pure. They can either be thoughts or emotions. And we'll talk those two correlate a little bit. They can be images that are very damaging in your heart and mind. They can be ideas that you don't like, and they can produce a lot of things that we don't want. And why do they occur? Well, they occur. Your body naturally is trying to protect you, and so in this protection, it's trying to get you set up in the best possible place, right? But here's the thing: is oftentimes, whether it's because we live in a society where stress is kind of always on us, or we have certain things we need to be anxious about, or things that we're not hunters and gatherers, so we're not in nature all the time, basically. And so we're not always just looking for these things to be stressed. We're not experiencing this correctly. And so we would know, hey, we're not going to die if we're experiencing this emotion, but not everybody's going to know that, right? And but your body has no way of knowing that. All it's trying to do is protect you. So where these invasive thoughts come from and why they occur is there are chemicals in your brain mixing around, and whenever they hit a certain capacity, they will shoot forth an image or a thing that's going to display a thought or emotion or a feeling that's going to be very harmful to you when your body's just trying to protect you, and it's just going in overdrive. Does that make sense? And so what does this produce? Well, this, in many cases, if you experience these on a bad part, these produce obsessions. Whenever we experience these emotions, whenever we experience these thoughts or harmful attitudes or ideas, oftentimes we'll start to worry, okay, why am I thinking these things? Why is this? And we'll start to obsess and obsess and obsess on them, all right? And this is, if you've ever heard of the term OCD, that's obsessive compulsion disorder. And that starts when an invasive thought comes into your brain, whether that be an emotion or just an idea or an image, and you just keep thinking about it because you can't get it out of your head. All right, well, do I really desire that? Is that really from me? Where does that come from? What do I need to do with that? And this can be very disrupting. This can be very disturbing to the person. And so this produces obsession. Why does this produce obsession? Well, again, remember what we talked about. Our body's trying to protect us. So our body, whenever we have the presence of these terrible images or thoughts or emotions, is trying to figure out where that's coming from. And so our body's producing them to protect us, and it's trying to take them away to protect us. And oftentimes, in the presence of these obsessions, we'll have little tics. You'll have a response you feel like you have to have in response to these obsessions. So every time you get an invasive thought, you obsess on it, and you feel like because that's there, you have to do something in order for it to go away. That is the compulsion part of OCD, is obsessive compulsion disorder. And so you are compelled to do something. And this isn't bad at first glance, but oftentimes people do not develop healthy habits of the compulsions that they do. And so oftentimes it becomes very harmful. And so you'll see people that self-harm. This is a large productor of self-harm, because pain makes your brain go towards where the pain is. So instead of obsessing over the thought, you're now thinking about the pain. And so instead of thinking the terrible things that happen with when those invasive thoughts come in that aren't from you, you are now just thinking about pain. And so these can produce very unhealthy habits. And so what do we do with the inputs that we get? Well, we do kind of the best we can. We receive the information, we receive the inputs, we receive the compulsions, we receive the obsessions, and we do the best with what we got, right? And so even if it's unhealthy, it's still the best what we have. And so today we're going to be talking about a little bit more about, hey, what can I do to maybe have better compulsions? Because you can't get rid of them, but you can ameliorate them into becoming better things. And so we go to our reactions. What kind of reaction are you giving to the thoughts? This segment of our lesson, we're going to be talking about just kind of the strength that you have over your brain. So here's what you can't do, is control the invasive thoughts. Do you know why they're called invasive? It's because they're invasive. They permeate everything. There's nothing you can do to stop them from coming in. But you have complete control over how you respond to them. Sorry, a loud truck. You have complete control over how you respond to them. And so what kind of reaction are you giving to the thought? How much power are you giving it? So the first thing you want to do is not give it much power. If you can get to a place where you receive an invasive thought and you start to obsess on, you're like, okay, well, this is what I think about this, but that's not the real situation. Well, then you have developed a very good coping mechanism, very good habit of, I don't have to give it power. Because here's the thing about invasive thoughts. They only have as much power as you're willing to give them. So then the next one is, have you associated these thoughts with certain emotions? Oftentimes invasive thoughts are so disturbing is because they disturb everything about it. It's not just that the thought enters, it's that the thought enters and then you have an emotional reaction to it. And oftentimes these aren't very good emotional reactions. These are depressions that can last for 4 or more weeks over one single thought that you can't get out of your head. These are sad thoughts that that would lead people to suicidal tendencies, to lead people to suicidal thoughts. These are harmful thoughts that make people think, okay, well, am I a bad person in this? Hey, do I desire these evil things that keep popping into my head? And this goes back to another power, but one thing we have to do with invasive thoughts is separate them from the emotions that we have connected them with. Remember earlier we talked about what do we do with the impulses? Well, we do the best we can. Oftentimes when that happens, that means we have associated a certain thought with a certain emotion. So that also works vice versa. When I feel this certain emotion now, because we're doing the best we can, when I feel this certain emotion, that must mean that something else is happening. Okay, well, that's not actually how that works. Your brain is trying to keep you safe, and so it's popping these thoughts into your head, and you are doing the best you can with your thoughts, and so you're connecting these emotions, but that's the first thing that we don't want to do. That is the number one thing with obsessive thoughts that we cannot do, is we have to remove them from the emotions that we have attributed them to. And this is very important because this is going to be something that's going to probably make it 20% better to live with. When you live with obsessive thoughts like this, is when you are able to learn to detach. When I see them, I see it like a big metal teardrop, and there's it's how I've learned to envision it. And there's mud caked over it. Well, the caked up mud is the emotions, and the teardrop, the big metal teardrop, is the invasive thought or intrusive thought. Okay, well, I can't do anything about the big metal teardrop, but I can sure wash the mud off, right? And so that's the first step we have to do, is find a way to make that make sense in your brain, and then wash the mud off of the thought so that you don't associate with emotions. And then third, do you know the power that you have within your own brain? You are in complete control of what you think. You may not be in this situation in complete control of what comes into your brain, but you are in control of what happens in there. You have power over these thoughts, even when everything in you is telling you that you do not have power over your thoughts. And when you say, well, Luke, I don't understand how to do that. How can I help? Okay, well, we're going to go through three techniques. We're going to go through three methods that I have learned. We're going to learn to apply them to how I did this. Before I continue, do we have any questions? Wes, do you have any questions?
No, I think I'm good for now.
Good. Do you understand? So on our pop quiz,
Yeah.
the first, I think we've answered 1 through 3. Do you understand how are those answers correlating with how is what I've said here correlating with what you said in those? Do you think?
Yeah, it matches up pretty well. I mean, I think you cleared it up pretty well. Like at the beginning when you talked about invasive, because as soon as I saw it, I was like, does he mean intrusive? And so I appreciate that little clear up there, and
so just they're interchangeable, but invasive has become the stronger terminology behind it, because intrusive oftentimes has been just in the psychology realm. Intrusive has kind of come up as this. All right, well, it's a normal thought. It's just getting in the way. That's not how. When we view these thoughts as that actually is damaging to the people that they're invasive because they're not from within. Mm-hmm. So if they were just intrusive, they would pop up and it would be like when you think about something dumb you did in the past. And it makes you go and think about that and you get embarrassed. That's an intrusive thought. It's a thought that I didn't really like that and it happened. That's okay. It just was dumb. I was being silly in that. I'm a little embarrassed again right now. But when it's an invasive thought, it's something that comes from outside. That's not an actual part of you. That's not real. Yeah. Is the biggest emphasis. These aren't real thoughts. They're real as in we feel them, but they are not real as in that we have to give them any. And so that's what I'm talking about. In, I guess, to the next one. Do you understand the power you have within your own brain? That's what I'm saying. Are you able to say, okay, that's not a real thought? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that make sense with number? I think it was number 3. I have written on there.
Well, number 3 says, "Have you ever had one?"
Oh, okay.
And then, so number 4, what do you do in response?
Yeah.
So absolutely, and like in these things, I may think these things, but not letting them just rest in my mind because they are not truly my thoughts.
100%. Well, sounds like we're having a good under. Well, so now we're gonna have 3 applications. So what are some things we can do to help in the presence of invasive thoughts? There is a commonly used strategy that is fighting. So if you're in a war, are you going to just sit there and just let it attack you? No, you're going to fight back. And so you have to find something that's equal and opposite. So equal in strength, but opposite in force, just like Newton's first law is equal and opposite. And so that's the thankfulness. And this is something that the Lord kind of put on my heart to start doing, and I see why. This is a healthy habit I've started to determine. So all the things I get attacked with, all the invasive thoughts that permeate my brain or will come at me, I've started to thank Him. So if it's, do you love the people that are in your life? And that's if that's the thought is, all right, you don't love people in your life because this, and this. Okay, well, no, that's true. No, instead, I'm going to be thankful with the same power towards those people in my life. So every morning when I wake up, part of my schedule is I'm going to sit here and I'm going to pray thankfulness for all the things I feel attack on. My salvation, my relationship, my friendships, the people in my life. I'm going to pray thankfulness in direct retaliation. So think of this one as our battle plan. This is what we do. This is how we're able to fight these. This is how we are to prepare ourselves to be able to fight these. The next one's called tumbleweeding. This is when, so oftentimes before an invasive thought will come, you'll have the thought pop up before an image pops up. And this has more to do with real brutal images that people with OCD often experience. This is what what I've been taught and learned to do is called tumbleweeding. And so I'll have the thought, okay, I'm about to think this. And then sure enough, in a second, it'll pop up and I'll see the thought. I have 2 choices. I can either hyper focus on that and think about it the rest of the day, or once I receive the indicator, hey, this thought's about to come up, I can let it tumble on through. Like an old Western movie where you see the tumbleweed flow through. That's exactly what you can do with your invasive thoughts. And you can, so when you get your indicator, you can say, all right, tumbleweed, and just let it roll through. Now it's hard to see the images, it's hard to understand all of that, but you don't have to obsess on them. And so that removes almost the compulsion part of it, is you can just let them flow on through. And then we can ameliorate our actions. Amelioration is the act of making something better. And so if our reactions to certain invasive thoughts are, okay, well, if I have a thought pop in my head, my first action is to cut myself. Okay, well, that's harmful. We don't need to do that. And so we need to find something else. And so I understand that you're not going to be able to just stop all the way, but instead of cutting yourself, maybe you can throw something at the wall. Okay, well, it may be silly, but it's much better than harming yourself. If we have a loud yelling, it's something pops up in our head and we have to yell to get it out. Okay, well that's going to be quite disruptive to people around us. It might be a healthy habit for you, but it's going to get in the way of everybody. Even your walk is going to get in the way. Going to get in the way of the walk of the people around you. And so we ameliorate that into something else. All right, well, can I just yell in my head? Is there something I can do? Can I shake? If I start getting real anxious, can I do one of those real quick? That's something I started doing. Is so instead of letting that frustration, anger get to my head, I make it get out at my shoulders. And so these are things we are able to ameliorate how we respond to these invasive thoughts. And so today in class, we learned what an invasive thought is, how they correlate with obsession. We understood our place in our own brain, the strength that we have in our own brain. And then we learned some new techniques to prevent them. So we're at the end. We have gone through our pop quiz. And how has this correlate? How has this responded? Have you learned anything new? Has there been anything that has been a same part of that you have used your pop quiz answers in response to? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing with this is with the apply section, I think I've done a lot of these, but you helped me define what I'm really doing in all this, and just in these thoughts, in these invasive thoughts that I have. It's tumbleweeding was something I would do, or ameliorating my actions, something you do. You talking about shaking it out of your shoulders. Sometimes I'll make a face and just shake my head just out in real life. And if you've ever seen me do that when nothing's going on, it's because an invasive thought was in my head. And so it's you've helped me associate that with terms now. And so realize and just have a better understanding of everything that's going on rather than it's just going on.
Yeah, sure. Well, sweet. Thank you all for coming out today. Thank you for walking through and listening, and thank you for being present.